and welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, sharing the knowledge, wisdom, and experience. To date, we've interviewed over hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussenmaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Graeme Muller. Graeme, welcome to the program.
Hi, Fritz, good to be here.
Graeme, allow me to briefly introduce you to our audience. You are the CEO of NZTech, which we'll cover a little bit later what that is. You are an executive with a number of IT-related associations you've been involved in, like the Council of AI Forum, IoT, BITSA, IDC. I also found out you used to be the chair of the NZ Table Tennis Association, and you live in Auckland. So again, welcome to the program. And welcome to The Brand Called You. And first of all, I see that behind you, NZTech. First of all, for the audience, what is NZTech?
Yeah, NZTech is it's the United Voice for Technology in New Zealand. It's the aggregation of a whole bunch of technology industry associations that have all pulled together to create one large association so that it can have a very strong voice. Because tech is now New Zealand's second largest export industry. Okay. It needed a bit more coordination.
Okay, and what kind of technologies does this involve?
Yeah, it's really broad. So in the NZTech group, we've got areas like AI and blockchain, but we've also got biotech, space, gaming, high-tech manufacturing, so sort of digital, biotech, and high-tech.
Okay, thank you. Now, I've noticed in your background, I just very, very briefly shared with the audience what your background, and it's almost all IT related with a small step outside into bio, which is big in New Zealand. But what draw you to the digital world?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story. I actually trained as a pharmacist. I had a passion for healthcare and pharmacy and the like. But when I was working in my internship, I got the opportunity to work for a pharmaceutical company. When I started working for a pharmaceutical company, I realized I quite liked the sales stuff. I ended up being a drug rep, driving at a very young age, driving a very fancy car and heading around the country. And when the drug company got bought by a larger company, I took the opportunity to do an MBA, headed to London, did an MBA. And when I came back to New Zealand, worked for a brewery in marketing, and it was around the dot-com era. They'd bought a whole lot of IT companies. The job I had was to help aggregate those companies up into some sort of value, and then we sold them to a VC firm in Bermuda, and that was my exposure to tech. From that point on, I started to realize how interesting technology was as an enabler for a lot of things.
Okay, so you more or less stumbled into technology.
Yeah.
Why
and
did
so I must say, I'm not the tech guy. I'm not a guy that's I don't code. I did once build myself a website, but it was a bit dodgy. So I'm not a tech guy, but I understand the value that tech can bring. So I'm more of a sales and marketing guy.
Okay, I got that, because also I wanted to, looking at the type of roles you had in all those associations, you're more like a manager of a board, and so it could be anything you would be trying to accomplish within that board. It just happens to be tech. So are you more a board person, or is it that real passion for what IT can do?
So now my role is like I am the CEO of this macro association and sit on a number of different boards, but it's all tech related. So I have, I guess, specialized in around understanding the opportunity that tech can bring and helping bridge that gap between many organizations that sort of don't really understand the value of technology or what AI can do for their business or the risk they might be facing and that sort of thing. And bringing the sort of the bridge between the tech and the business.
Okay, now what I've experienced around the world, there's quite a big gap between technology and the understanding on the business side. So you just mentioned AI, and I see a lot of people following the AI route, especially with AGI at the moment, but not necessarily understanding the technology they're making decisions on. First of all, how's that like in New Zealand, and what kind of role does your organization play to take away that I would say mystery of what this technology can do?
Yeah, we're very similar to the rest of the world. It's sort of a lot of people standing back to sort of see what will happen, not really understanding the massive opportunity that is right in front of them, but it also comes with risk. And in New Zealand, we've tended to put a lot of energy and focus around the risk side, and be a bit more conservative around the use. And I guess what we're doing with our various associations is trying to help people be aware of the opportunities, the productivity, the health gains, the climate gains that can be driven by tech. For example, recently we just did a piece of research with the government looking at the current emissions reduction plan that we have in place, which is not very heavy on tech. And it shows that we'll probably end up not meeting our emissions targets. And then looking at the various different technologies that could be deployed rapidly that are already here, like digital technology, smart meters, some of these things, to reduce that cost and accelerate our emissions reduction. So the people looking at the emissions side of things in different sectors like agriculture and transport weren't very techy. So they were trying to do what they've always done versus actually do something completely new, look at the data, use it, AI, etc.
Okay, and is that a difficult change to make? I mean, or is society reluctant to look at what technology can bring? AI, are they scared of it, concerned about it, or are they embracing what it could do?
A bit of both, but I think the biggest game changer was the drop of Gen AI, the introduction of ChatGPT, because suddenly, it to me, that's the equivalent of Netflix for going online and video, or code for Zoom calls. No one was doing them until there was some massive tipping point, and then all of a sudden we're all experts at it. So we're seeing the same in this last 12 months, the massive uptake of interest in our community. The AI forum, for example, membership has doubled with large organizations, not tech firms. Traditionally, membership was tech firms, but now you've got a lot of large organizations, government departments, and big corporates joining the AI forum because they're going, hey, we need to rub shoulders with the AI people. We need to get this stuff going. We need to know where the problems might be that we don't understand, that sort of stuff. Yeah, I guess the more we use it, the easier it gets.
Okay, I got that. And to what extent, maybe this is a question with an obvious answer, but to what extent has technology helped the world come a little bit closer to New Zealand, or New Zealand to the rest of the world?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because maybe the viewers don't know much about New Zealand, but it is a long way away from everything. It's at the bottom, down below Australia, heading towards Antarctica. It's actually a 3.5-hour flight to our nearest country, which is Australia. So if you live in Europe or the US, you're talking about traveling across multiple countries, right? So we're a long way from anything. Our traditional industry has been creating food. We've got just a massive amount of food production. We produce enough food for about 50 million people. Population's only 5. So we have a big export of meat products, dairy products, horticulture, like fruit and vegetables, and fish. So a lot of food. And that's meant we've been a long way from markets. We've had to pack it into ships and ship it off and to other markets. The introduction in New Zealand of tech and companies developing tech, we've always had IT companies, right? But it'd be locally focused. But as companies started to create and export, particularly in the software as a service space, where we've got quite a lot of growth businesses, a couple of unicorns, with the economy and more people are realizing that actually we can build a business. We don't even have to sit in the main center. We could be at the beach town, build our business, sell our products around the world. We can export it instantly. Our gaming sector is approaching $1 billion industry for New Zealand, which means it's getting close to the same size as wine exports for us. And these are small businesses with people who go out surfing in the morning and then come home and do their coding, and all their customers are online, and they don't have any local customers. So it's a fascinating change, and it's happened over the last decade, where tech has just gone from just a couple of 100 million exports into it's just reaching about 10 billion, which is about 9% of our export out of New Zealand.
And does that also mean it's attracting people to move to New Zealand because it's also a great country just to be in? And I had that pleasure.
Yeah, we're the biggest issue we have is developing enough local people for the sector. It's easy to get people from overseas to show an interest to come to New Zealand. They won't get the same big exciting job they might get in Silicon Valley, but they'll get lifestyle, they'll get a good business. And now that we've got several international businesses and a few unicorns and things, you can actually get some pretty exciting stuff. So yeah, we tend to do a bit of marketing. We run a campaign called See Tomorrow First, which is global guerrilla marketing to show that New Zealand's a high-tech country. And it's really about the fact that the sun rises in New Zealand first, that that we're so far away, we've had to kind of invent things. The guy that split the atom came from New Zealand. One of the guys that discovered DNA came from New Zealand. The dude that climbed up Mount Everest came from New Zealand. Person who McLaren Formula One team came out of New Zealand. Glaxo came out of New Zealand. So we've been inventing really cool, interesting things for a long time, but we haven't really told the world about it too much. And that sort of marketing is attracting experienced senior folk with their families to come and live in an environment where it's safe and it's green and it's clean, and they can still do the job they were doing. In fact, we have quite a few folk from people like Google or IBM or Microsoft who do global roles based out of New Zealand just because they can now with the internet experience that everyone's comfortable with.
So the world, so technology has very much changed I would say your perception of the world, but also the world's perception of what New Zealand is. It's come closer.
It's helping. It's come closer. It's helping. I mean, we're still small and we're a long way away from everyone, so we have to yell a lot louder to be recognized. But it's certainly it's easier to be part of it.
Well, I do see New Zealand doing a good job, and as it's one of the original digital nations, when that association, that organization was formed, if I remember correctly, there were the very first 5 nations in the world who qualified like the top digital nation in the world. One was New Zealand. So already when the governments became digital, New Zealand realized, hey, we're actually on the top of that list.
Yeah, I mean the government's use of digital is pretty good, and it continues to be. They're quite well connected with other governments around the world. The biggest challenge we've got is we have a large, in fact, most countries probably do, but a massive small business market, SME market, and it's getting the regular businesses to uptake the technology. There's a lot of productivity opportunity there. New Zealand has pretty low productivity. We work long hours. We tend to throw more people at a problem. So there's a lot of opportunity because we've got a lot of horticulture and agriculture. That shift to data analytics, putting the fertilizer in the right place at the right time, using robotics, that sort of stuff is just starting to emerge in the hort sector. So we've continued to do a lot of traditional business work, and so this technology, if we can actually get it into the smaller businesses, I think will be the biggest gain for New Zealand. Okay,
now I want to go a little bit more into say your personal role, your contribution as a CEO. What are you looking for? How do you define success in your organization? When are you going to be happy?
I'm always happy. So that's a good starting point. For me, we've got basically a job to do. So it's making sure that everyone is that our story, our vision, the direction we go in is really strong. Create purpose. So I've always looked to have quite a purpose-driven organization. It's a lot easier to get a bunch of people who want different things lined up around something that's bigger than them, that's purposeful. So for this organization, we're actively trying to create a more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous New Zealand underpinned by good technology. And so that attracts a lot of different people for different reasons. And then once we've got that really strong purpose, then getting that good team around that can actually help lead. I think the main thing, my personal opinion, is the main thing for a CEO or someone leading something is surrounding yourself and getting a whole lot of other people that can, it's replicating and getting other people passionate about and getting them delivering and lining up what they like doing with the outcome of the organization. And so that I spent a lot of time with the team. We've got 42 people in the team now, so I've got too many direct reports, but I know I should have less, but it's just the way it is at the moment. And I spend a lot of time with those people, just often just talking about their lives and making sure that if they're in a good spot, they tend to be more productive, and keeping that alignment between the clarity of what they need to do on their workday and how that might help them in their personal life as well.
I find the question, is that something you consciously seek to discuss, or is that something an employee would bring up and it just happens to be that conversation you're going to have at that time?
I think you need to, you create the environment where it can happen.
Yeah.
So don't go in with a checklist of questions.
Yeah.
We have formal meetings when you might be working on a project, or you're working on a quarterly meeting looking at targets and things like that. But I also intersperse catch-up times, which start off with a coffee and a chat, and then you get their context, and then suddenly you've got their context, and it makes more sense instead of diving straight into why isn't this project finished, or how come things are a little bit slow, how come your membership might be a little bit slow, you've had a few non-renewals.
Yeah.
Start off with the coffee and the context, and then you go, your mum's got cancer and is dying, and you're a bit distracted. How can we help you so that your business is still going well while you're dealing with that? Should we throw some more resource at it for a while? Do you need some time off, etc.? So context is king, right? If you don't have context, and everyone's an individual, so you can't sort of create a standard process that goes, this is the way it's all going to work, and then I've got it all polished. If you've got people reporting to you, you're always going to have things going on. It doesn't matter how big your organization. As soon as you get your first employee, that's as soon as you put your first bit of complexity into your job.
Okay, so it's a people's business, and you have to realize people work for you, and they have a life outside of the work they do. Yeah,
exactly. And I guess you have to trust or believe that people perform best when they've got a clear purpose, when they like coming to work, when they can see it, they get respect, and there's value in what they're doing. And you can't change. People get sick, they have families. There's a myriad of different things that can go wrong in people's lives. You only got to look at your own life. How plain sailing is it, right? And then you put that context in, and if you understand what different people, sometimes all they want to know is that it's okay. So it's okay to be a bit grumpy today because your kids just ripped you one before you've gone to work, and then you can sort yourself out. Or it's okay to not be on perfect form every single day. Or you think you're not doing well, but actually when you have those conversations, you can say, actually, well, I set that target just to give you a bit of stretch. This is actually the thing that's most important, and you're doing that well. So it's just lots of conversations, because I don't think you can replace the human element no matter how much AI we get in. In fact, in our organization, we've adopted quite a lot of ChatGPT in terms of we do a lot of comms and a lot of events and things like that. And that's improved our productivity. It hasn't replaced anyone. It's allowed us to do more things more effectively, and helping people get up to speed with that tool, and realizing that they could use it to be more effective, and actually then maybe go home a little bit earlier so they're there for their kids and stuff like that. No one's scared of.
Okay.
Well, not scared of ChatGPT. They might be scared of AI in general, but not of ChatGPT.
And it sounds very much like practice what you preach as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I was thinking about when you mentioned how you approach your role as a CIO, how did you learn how to do that? Did you have a role model yourself? Was, hey, that's a good example. I want to be like that person.
Yeah, I've had some good role models. Not necessarily specifically to say there's the sort of the ultimate one I want to be like, but I kind of, you learn different things from different people. Sometimes it's learning what not to do.
Yeah.
I had a really good mentor when I was working at Lion Nathan, which is a large brewery in New Zealand, and we'd set up a side business for the IT that we're trying to get rid of that that accumulated and decided they didn't need. This individual was on the board of Lion Nathan, and he sat on our board as well. And it was really good at just helping me just see that you didn't have to be perfect. And the key message I got, the key thing I got from that experience was to stop asking for approval. So I think when you're younger, sometimes you do something and you've got this hierarchy above you, and then you just want to check in that what you've done is okay. But that changing point where it was like actually believing that you've done it because you know how to do it best and you've done it, and then someone will tell you if it's wrong. Don't go and ask if it's okay all the time. So stopping asking for approval was a big one in terms of my development. And then later on, I've just had some that have been really good at putting in HR processes and seeing the difference when you've actually got something organized and how it didn't look organized. It looked very smooth and relaxed, but it was a lot of, which I've done in this job, put a lot of process, use lots of tools and reminders. So everyone's got plans and we have meetings and all this, but it feels very organic. It feels like it's just happening. It doesn't feel like we're just doing it for a purpose. So using tools to make it easier and make it more natural, I hadn't thought of. I'd always thought that you just go with the flow to make it natural. If you use tools, it got too structured. But actually using the tools meant that you could create the time and more efficiency and not forget people, and then not jam them all together and not be just doing paperwork, and you're actually focusing on the conversation and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so now that good learning points. Now you mentioned you started off trained as a pharmacist and you morphed into the role you have right now. You describe it as a gradual process to some extent, but have there been some key milestones in your life and your career where you feel, hey, that's in hindsight was a milestone where something changed for me?
Yeah, I think I really, right from, like I did the pharmacy degree and it's a 5-year process, and then I'm working in the hospital. And I think that right from the outset, I realized that while I'm really interested, I love learning and I loved all the stuff about medicine, I actually like managing the people. So right in my early stage, I got opportunities to like lead a team and do things. And I realized that actually managing people was what got me excited, is getting yourself multiplied basically. And so when you had something to do, then having lots of people doing their part, and then it creates something bigger than you could do yourself. And so that happened quite early. And then as the opportunities came along, whenever I took an opportunity that was part of something where I had a team or managed something, I enjoyed it more. So as I went off to kind of retrain, when I had the opportunity, when the big company got bought, and I put my hand up for a voluntary redundancy, and I could go to get another job, or I thought I could go and retrain. So I thought I'd go and study how to be a manager. So I went and did an MBA, and that was the real tipping point where beforehand it was experiences and just doing things, but no structure around it. But then when I went to London and met other people like myself, and we were pushed really hard for a couple of years, and you learn all these tools and techniques, and then you had this network of people and you had this exposure. So when I came to my first job after that, I immediately came in as a senior manager role. And then I was thrown in the deep end with a massive team, and reporting to a board, and then was deploying the tools, and found I did it really well and I enjoyed it. And then away I went. And so that combination with the coaching from the guy from Lion, who was don't ask approval. The other thing he said was, some people come up in one career path, and other people can go through all sorts of things. He said, you're doing all sorts of things, but what's common is you just find those common themes. And so what the two common themes is really around people and communications. So kind of marketing and management. And so then I just doubled down on those sorts of roles and experiences, things that would get me the opportunity to manage, but also worked in sort of a market environment. So I landed in the tech space randomly because of the next role I took, which was at IDC. But then I spent a decade at IDC around the world helping manage country offices and regional offices, and then also realizing how cool tech was to actually amplify all your work as well. So not just building people, but using tools to, even get more out of that group.
Okay. Hey, maybe you've already answered a question I haven't asked yet, but in hindsight, do you feel that the education you started off with, was that a waste of time in hindsight, or was it still valuable doing your pharmacy education?
Definitely valuable. I personally don't think any education's a waste. If you've got what that taught me was it was a very tough course to go through, and it gives you the rigor to sit down and study and learn and just pack your brains with a massive amounts of information. And even now, I constantly I'm surprised by what comes out of my head at times when people ask me something, or they're talking about some sort of medical thing, and I go, blah, or this medicine or that. And so it's in there. I think just learning to enjoy learning is the critical success factor. And we're trying to teach that to our daughter, is that it's like just enjoy the learning, be inquisitive and learn something else, because I've got 3 different degrees now, so I have pivoted. So in the middle there somewhere, I did when I was at the drug company, I did a marketing degree while I was doing my while I was a sales rep. I realized that I didn't want to be a salesperson all the time, so I did a degree in the actual marketing and marketing management and understanding that. So yeah, none of that stuff's useless because you pull it out. It's amazing the stuff I pull out from my pharmacy qualifications when I'm dealing with something else, and I realize that, oh yeah, that's the adrenaline's kicked in, or I can see the body language change, or and I'm seeing it from a medical perspective, just because I can see different. I see if someone's flushing around the neck, I realize that I can see it from a medical perspective rather than just what's happening to them, or are they embarrassed or something like that. And yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah. So I would summarize that as the lesson learned. Any education is never a waste of time. You're always going to learn something. You learn to learn. You learn to love to learn.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is relatively, we live a long life. Yeah. So set out on a journey which you think's right now. Learn as much as you can about the stuff you're interested in, what you want to do. And then if the world changes, your life changes, or it just doesn't turn out to be as interesting as you thought it was, do something new. Yeah. It only takes a few months or a few years to learn something, but you've got then, like literally, I did my pharmacy degree. I worked as a pharmacist for 10 years. Then I did an MBA, and I worked for 10 years in IDC internationally.
No, sorry.
And another 10 years in this role, running an association and advising ministers and organizations about the emerging tech and things like that. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years?
So, is that actually something you've thought about? Is there a life for you, and you could say after NZTech? Is that something you discuss or thinking about? And how would it look like?
Yeah. It's an interesting one because I really love the job, but I also don't want to be stuck here doing the same thing forever, right? Like anyone. I'm really interested in, and this is a bit more tricky to pull off, but really interested in helping those smaller companies, and been chatting with some friends and colleagues around setting up a venture capital fund. Yeah. And be able to leverage the global experience and connections and things like that and connecting with some folk who understand the IT side and some folk who understand the money side, and but then bringing it into businesses that and help, finding a few and helping them go on their journey, particularly in the area of good tech. I think New Zealand has a strong brand around good for the world, healthy, clean, and the technology we're trying to produce. A lot of our international tech is quite good. So climate tech type stuff, health tech, there's a lot in that space, mental health, well-being. So finding some companies that can actually take a really nice thing and amplify it through the world, and you're doing good, and enabling those companies. That's, for me, that's kind of like the step I'm working on now, is how to make that next evolutionary change to get involved in the capital side of things.
The fact that you're sharing this, I would say, with the world, talking to the brand called you, would this be a surprise to your colleagues, or are they already familiar with what your next step could be?
I don't think it's any surprise. I've been doing this job for a long time, and everyone knows I'm not around forever.
Yeah.
Some that I've been talking to, it's kind of all of my changes have came opportunistically. So I don't, there's no one saying, hey, come and work for me, or here's a bunch of cash or something like that. I've found that if you start to plant the seed, talk about stuff, then serendipity will hopefully align at the right time. Because I don't have a big pile of cash. I can't start my own venture capital fund. I can't, invest in someone else's fund. But if I start talking about different things, talking with different people, that would be something I think would be quite interesting, would be involved in that space. Okay. It may or may not happen. Saying something like this, if someone listens, they might go, oh, that's an interesting guy. We'll go have a chat with them. So this is how serendipity works.
In a lot of cases, it does. Hey, Graeme, I'm going to finish this great conversation with one final question I have. And you've given so much great advice already, but is there any explicit advice you'd give young people out there, young managers starting their own journey? What would that advice be?
Yeah, well, I guess if it's wanting to head off to be a manager or currently being a manager, I would say it's really around people and understanding that context thing I talked about. And it's really easy to see the world in a sort of in a black and white perspective. Like, you've already made up your mind, you know what people are thinking, without remembering that everyone's got a whole lot of other stuff going on. So the advice that I give young folk that I work with, and I've done it for a number of years, is in the first year you're sort of in there working in a job, get away with the fact that you're new in that job, and ask a lot of questions. Just say, you don't have to have all the answers, so ask a lot of questions, and you'll learn a lot, and it'll make you better. In the second year, you're going to have some confidence. You're going to think you know all the answers now, so you're probably going to want to tell people things all the time. But it's the perfect year to ask a lot of questions, because people will expect you to be saying things. But actually, if you ask a lot of questions, you'll learn a lot. And then in the third year, now you've realized that asking questions is quite powerful, and people will come to you and they'll be asking questions. They'll want your advice and your support. Again, ask a lot of questions. So it's really easy. It's too easy for us to think we know what's happening. And without that context, you can end up really digging yourself in a hole, or not being as effective as you can, or upsetting people, or getting in trouble. So if you can create a default mechanism where you ask a lot of questions, you'll get much more context, and you'll be able to outperform others, because you'll understand it a lot, what's going on around a lot better. So yeah, ask a lot of questions.
You've given us some great advice, Graeme, and I really want to thank you for sharing your insights. And well, I'm going to watch where you go, what your next step will be eventually. For now, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and talking about NZTech and your role with the brand called You. So, Graeme, thank you so much.
Thanks, Fritz. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.